Welcome to my channel, a list that brings your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The champagne flute shattered against marble before I even registered what I'd done. Crystal shards scattered across the terrace like diamonds under the string lights. And my heart dropped straight through the polished floor beneath my cheap work flats. The tray trembled in my hands. Silver, heavy, worth more than 3 months of my salary. As I stared at the wreckage of what had been a perfectly balanced pyramid of glasses just seconds ago. "I'm so sorry, The apology died on my lips, because that's when I saw him. He stood near the balcony railing, partially shrouded in shadow despite the warm glow of the garden party below. The cut of his suit was so precise it looked like it had been painted onto his frame. Midnight black, probably Italian, definitely more expensive than my entire year's rent. But it wasn't the clothes that made my breath catch. It was the way everyone else on the terrace had unconsciously created a radius of space around him, like planets orbiting a dark star. I'd been working at the Belmonte Hotel for 6 months, serving Montevallo's elite at their exclusive events, and I'd learned to read power. Real power didn't announce itself with loud voices or grand gestures. It existed in the silence that followed when someone entered a room, in the way conversations paused mid-sentence, in the subtle straightening of spines, and the careful neutrality of expressions. This man wore power like a second skin. "Miss Hayes." The event coordinator's voice cut through my frozen panic. Margaret's perfectly painted smile didn't reach her eyes as she gripped my elbow hard enough to bruise. "Clean this up. Immediately." I dropped to my knees, my black skirt pooling on the cold marble as I began gathering the larger shards. My reflection fractured in each piece. 20 versions of the same exhausted girl with dark circles under her eyes and hair that refused to stay in its regulation bun. The party hummed around me with the particular frequency of money and influence. Laughter like wind chimes, the clink of real silverware against bone china, conversations in 3 different languages about things I couldn't begin to understand. Offshore accounts, real estate portfolios, political appointments. I was invisible here. Just another server in a white button-down and black vest, meant to appear and disappear like a ghost, anticipating needs before they were spoken. My fingers found a particularly sharp shard, and I hissed as it bit into my thumb. A bead of blood welled up, dark against my pale skin. I pressed it against my vest, hoping Margaret wouldn't notice. I couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with Mom's medical bills stacking up like a house of cards ready to collapse, and my studio apartment in the warehouse district where the heat barely worked, and the neighbors' arguments bled through paper-thin walls at 3 a.m. Here. A hand extended into my field of vision, holding a pristine white handkerchief. I looked up and up, following the line of a perfectly pressed black suit, until I met eyes the color of smoke and steel. Up close, he was even more devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth that suggested both cruelty and sensuality, and a scar that cut through his left eyebrow like a signature of violence barely contained. No, I couldn't." My voice came out smaller than I'd intended. "Take it." Not a request. His voice was low, accented with something Mediterranean that made each word sound like dark honey poured over gravel. "You're bleeding." I accepted the handkerchief with shaking fingers, our skin brushing for half a second. His hand was warm, contrasting with the coldness that seemed to emanate from his presence. The fabric was silk, monogrammed with initials I couldn't quite make out in the low light. It felt wrong to stain something so expensive with my cheap Waitress blood. "Thank you," I whispered, wrapping it around my thumb. He didn't move, didn't step back to restore the appropriate distance between patron and server. Instead, he studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. Like I was a puzzle he was taking apart piece by piece. "What's your name?" "Emma." It came out automatically, even though I knew better. Rule number 1, don't give personal information. Stay invisible. "Emma Hayes. Emma." He repeated it like he was tasting each syllable, committing it to memory. Beautiful name for a beautiful woman. Heat crept up my neck. Men like him didn't notice girls like me. We existed in completely different universes. His made of penthouse suites and private jets, mine made of double shifts and expired milk in a refrigerator that barely worked. A man appeared at his elbow, seemingly from nowhere, built like a brick wall in an identical black suit, with an earpiece and the kind of watchful eyes that catalogued every exit, every potential threat. Security. The serious kind. "Sir." The bodyguard spoke in a low murmur. "We need to move to the interior. I'm having a conversation, Marco." The words were soft, almost gentle, but something in them made the massive man step back immediately, his jaw tightening. "Of course, sir. My apologies." I gathered the last of the broken glass onto my tray with trembling hands, acutely aware of his gaze still fixed on me. The cut on my thumb throbbed in time with my racing pulse. "You should be more careful," he said, and there was something almost tender in his tone. "These people," he gestured to the party around us, "they would step over you if you fell, Emma Hayes. They wouldn't even notice the blood on their expensive shoes." There was truth in his words that stung worse than the cut on my thumb. I'd seen it before. The casual cruelty of the wealthy. The way they treated people like me as interchangeable parts in the machine of their comfort. "I'll be more careful," I managed, standing with the tray of shattered crystal. "Thank you for the—" An explosion of sound cut through the night. Not an explosion. Fireworks. The garden below erupted in bursts of gold and silver, planned entertainment for Montevallo's finest. But in that split second before my brain processed what the sound actually was, every instinct in my body screamed danger, and I saw his bodyguard reaching into his jacket, and I saw the tension that transformed the man in front of me from urbane gentleman to apex predator in the span of a heartbeat. And I saw, over his shoulder, through the glass doors leading into the hotel, a flash of something that didn't belong. A figure in black, face covered, and in their hands, something that caught the light wrong, something metal and purposeful. Time moved like honey. The man's eyes were still on me, his body turning toward the perceived threat of the fireworks. The bodyguard was speaking urgently into his wrist. And inside, through those glass doors, the figure was raising whatever they held, pointing it toward the balcony, toward him. My body moved before my mind caught up. The tray fell from my hands with a clatter that no one heard over the fireworks. I lunged forward, my palms connecting with his chest, expensive fabric and hard muscle beneath, and I pushed. He was solid, immovable, but surprise worked in my favor. He stumbled backward, his eyes widening in shock as his shoulders hit the balcony railing. "What the—" The glass doors exploded inward. Fire bloomed where he'd been standing, a savage flower of orange and red that turned night into day. The concussive force threw me backward, and I had a fractured moment to see his face. Shock transformed into something else, something calculating and cold, before the world tilted. My back hit marble. The air punched out of my lungs. Heat washed over me in a suffocating wave, and through the ringing in my ears, I heard screaming, stampeding feet, the chaos of beautiful people confronted with beautiful violence. Smoke burned my throat as I gasped for air, tried to move, couldn't. Then hands, strong, urgent, gripped my arms. I was being lifted, pulled, dragged away from the heat and the screaming. My vision swam with tears and smoke. But I caught a glimpse of him, the man from the balcony. His perfect suit was torn, face smudged with soot, but those steel-gray eyes were laser-focused on me. "Don't let go of her," he commanded someone. "Marco, probably. She doesn't leave your sight." "Sir, we need to evacuate." I said don't let go of her. The world was spinning, sounds fading in and out like a radio losing signal. I tried to speak, to ask what happened. Who was that? Why did someone try to kill him? But darkness was pulling at me with insistent fingers, and the last thing I registered before I slipped under was his voice, low and deadly serious, speaking to someone I couldn't see. Find out everything. Her life, her debts, her mother, her friends. Everything. I want her background on my desk in an hour, and double the security on her building. No one touches her. No one even looks at her wrong. A pause. Then, softer, almost to himself. She saved my life, which means now she's mine. The darkness took me completely, pulling me down into unconsciousness with those words echoing in my head like a promise and a threat wrapped into one. Mine. I woke up drowning in Egyptian cotton. The sheets were so soft they felt liquid against my skin, nothing like the scratchy Target clearance bedding in my studio apartment. For a disoriented moment, I thought I was dreaming, that I'd fallen asleep during my shift, and this was my brain's cruel joke, offering me luxury I'd never touch in real life. Then the pain hit. My back throbbed like one giant bruise, and when I tried to sit up, every muscle screamed in protest. The movement sent a sharp ache through my ribs that made me gasp, and suddenly there were hands on my shoulders, gentle but firm, pressing me back down. "Easy, Miss Hayes. You have bruised ribs and a mild concussion. The doctor said you need to rest." I blinked against the soft lamplight, my vision slowly focusing on the woman standing beside the bed. She was maybe 50, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore scrubs, pale blue, medical grade, and had the competent air of someone who'd spent decades caring for people. "Where?" My throat was raw, probably from the smoke. "Where am I?" "You're safe." She poured water from a crystal pitcher into a glass, holding it to my lips. "Drink slowly." The water was cool and perfect, probably filtered through something that cost more than my car. I drained half the glass before my brain started cataloging details of the room around me. Not a hospital. Definitely not a hospital. The bedroom was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and gold that screamed quiet wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a view of Montevallo's skyline glittering against the night sky. We were high up, maybe penthouse level. Original artwork hung on the walls, the kind I'd only seen in museums. A fireplace, an actual marble fireplace in a bedroom, crackled softly in the corner. "What happened?" I asked, memories flooding back in jagged pieces. The party, the broken glass, steel gray eyes, the explosion. The bomb, everyone at the hotel. 4 injuries, none life-threatening. "You were the worst hurt, and only because you were closest to the blast." The nurse adjusted my pillows with practiced efficiency. "You're very lucky, Miss Hayes." "Lucky?" "Right, because getting caught in an assassination attempt was the height of good fortune." "I need to go home." I tried to sit up again, and again she stopped me. "My mom. She'll be worried. And my shift tomorrow. Oh God, did I lose my job?" Margaret was already furious about the glasses. "Your mother has been informed that you're safe and recovering from an accident. She believes you're in the hospital." The nurse's tone was soothing, the kind used on panicking patients. "Your supervisor at the Belmonte has been told you'll be taking medical leave. Everything is arranged." "Arranged? By whom?" The question stuck in my throat because I already knew the answer. "He brought you here," the nurse continued, as if reading my mind. "Mr. Russo insisted on the best care. Dr. Chen examined you thoroughly. No internal bleeding, no permanent damage. You just need rest. Russo." Finally, a name to attach to those predatory eyes. "I can't stay here." My voice came out stronger than I felt. "I don't even know him. It's not appropriate. Please, I just need to go home." The nurse's expression shifted to something almost pitiful. "Miss Hayes, your studio apartment on Warehouse Street doesn't have working heat. You're recovering from smoke inhalation and trauma. Mr. Russo has arranged. How does he know where I live?" The words came out sharper than intended, fear bleeding through as anger. "How does he know about my mother, about my apartment's heat?" She didn't answer. Didn't need to. The door opened without a knock, and my breath caught. He filled the doorway like he owned it, which, given this was clearly his penthouse, he probably did. The ruined suit from the party was gone, replaced by dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms roped with muscle, and what looked like the edge of a tattoo disappearing under the fabric. His hair was damp, recently showered, and the soot was gone from his face. But that scar through his eyebrow remained. A reminder of violence survived. "Leave us, Teresa." Not a request. The nurse gathered her things without a word, squeezing my hand briefly before she slipped out. The click of the door closing sounded unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. He moved into the room with the grace of a predator, completely at ease in his territory. I was acutely aware that I was in bed, wearing what felt like silk pajamas I definitely hadn't owned before, in a strange man's home with no idea how I'd gotten here. "How are you feeling?" He pulled a chair close to the bed, too close, and sat, elbows on his knees, those steel eyes studying me with unnerving intensity. Like I was caught in an explosion. I tried to inject some backbone into my voice. "Thank you for the medical care, Mr. Russo. But I really should—" "Dante." He interrupted smoothly. "You saved my life, Emma. I think we're past formalities." Dante Russo. The name triggered something in my memory. Fragments of overheard conversations at the hotel, whispered warnings from other servers about certain guests who required extra discretion. The Russo family owned half of Montevallo's waterfront, legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, import-export, and underneath, like an iceberg's hidden mass, rumors of things that happened in shadows. "What happened at the party?" I asked, because I needed to understand what I'd stumbled into. "Who tried to kill you?" "Enemies." He said it like he was commenting on the weather. "I have many. It's the cost of my business. What business requires people to bomb you at charity events?" Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or approval. "You're braver than you look, Emma Hayes. Most people don't question me so directly. Most people probably aren't being held in your penthouse against their will. You're not being held." He leaned back, and I caught the glint of a shoulder holster under his shirt. He was armed. In his own home. "You're being protected. There's a difference. Protected from what? From the men who wanted me dead and will now want to know who pushed me out of the way." His voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was explaining something obvious. "You're on their radar now, Emma. That makes you vulnerable. That makes you my responsibility." The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. "I don't want to be anyone's responsibility. I just want to go home. Home to your studio with no heat? To your overnight shifts that barely cover your mother's cancer treatments?" He tilted his head, and there was nothing cruel in his tone, just brutal honesty. "I know everything about you now, Emma. I know you're drowning in debt. I know you work 70 hours a week between 2 jobs. I know you haven't bought yourself new clothes in 8 months because every penny goes to keeping your mother alive." Shame burned through me, hot and acidic. "You had no right. I had every right." He leaned forward again, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne mixed with something darker, dangerous. "You put yourself between me and a bomb. That kind of loyalty, that kind of instinct. It's rare, precious. And now you're a target because of it. So what?" My hands fisted in the silk sheets. "You're going to keep me locked up here like some kind of prisoner?" "No." His smile was slight, predatory. "I'm going to make you an offer." I waited, heart hammering against my bruised ribs. "Your mother needs treatment at the Montevallo Cancer Center. The best oncologist in the country works there. Dr. Helena Voss. Her waiting list is 2 years long, and she costs more per month than you make in a year." He paused, letting that sink in. "I can get your mother an appointment next week. I can cover all her treatments, all her medications, everything she needs. Full remission is possible, Emma. She could actually survive this." The words hit me like a physical blow. Hope, desperate, painful hope, flared in my chest before I could stop it. "What do you want in return? You stay here, under my protection. You work for me instead of the hotel. Administrative work, nothing illegal. You let me keep you safe until the threat is neutralized." His eyes held mine, and I saw calculation there, strategy. "And you let me get to know the woman who saved my life. That's it?" Suspicion made my voice sharp. "You'll save my mother's life in exchange for what, exactly? Because men like you don't make deals without getting something valuable in return." "Men like me?" He raised that scarred eyebrow. "Dangerous men. Men who wear guns to dinner and have bodyguards who look like they've killed people. Men who have enemies willing to bomb crowded parties." I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I'm not stupid, Mr. Russo. Dante. Whatever you are, whoever you are, this isn't charity. So tell me what you really want." The silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. Then he smiled. A real smile this time, and it transformed his face from coldly beautiful to devastating. Honesty. I appreciate that. He stood, moving to the window, hands in his pockets as he looked out at the city lights. You're right. I don't do charity, but I do pay my debts, and I owe you my life. More than that. He turned back to face me, and something in his expression made my pulse skip. I'm intrigued by you, Emma Hayes. A girl who works herself to exhaustion for a mother who's dying anyway, who stays invisible, keeps her head down, asks for nothing. And then, in one moment of pure instinct, throws herself between a stranger and certain death. Anyone would have done the same, no. His voice was flat, certain. They wouldn't have. I've been in this world long enough to know. Most people freeze. Most people run. You pushed me out of the way without a second's hesitation, and that... He moved back toward the bed, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. That tells me something about who you are. Something I want to understand. This is insane. But my voice wavered. I don't even know you. You will. He reached out, and I froze as his fingers brushed my cheek, gentle, almost reverent. Take the deal, Emma. Let me save your mother. Let me keep you safe. And in return, you stay here, work for me, and give me the chance to figure out why a girl who has every reason to hate people like me would risk her life for one. I should have said no. Should have run from this room, this penthouse, this man who looked at me like I was something precious and breakable and his. Everything about this screamed danger. The kind that wore expensive suits and made offers that sounded too good to be true. But I thought of Mom, of her frail body wasting away in that hospice room that smelled like disinfectant and death. Of the doctors who'd stopped meeting my eyes when they told me there was nothing more they could do. Of the reality that I was going to watch her die slowly, painfully, while I worked myself into an early grave trying to buy her a few more months. 1 month, I heard myself say. I'll stay for 1 month. You protect me, get my mother into treatment, and I'll work for you. But after that, if the threat is gone, I leave. No strings, no debt. Deal? He studied me for a long moment, and I saw the calculation behind his eyes. The weighing of options, the strategy of a man who played chess with human lives. Deal. He extended his hand. I took it, and his fingers closed around mine with a warmth that felt like a brand, like a claim. Like the beginning of something I couldn't take back. Get some rest, Emma. Tomorrow we'll discuss your new position. And I'll have Marco drive you to visit your mother. She should hear about her treatment from you. He released my hand and moved toward the door, but paused at the threshold. Oh, and Emma, the clothes in the closet are yours. I had my assistant purchase everything you'll need. Burn those hotel uniforms. You won't be needing them anymore. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I was alone in the golden bedroom with its silk sheets and city view, and the growing certainty that I'd just made a deal with the devil. Outside, the city glittered like a beautiful lie, and somewhere in the darkness, people who wanted Dante Russo dead were now looking for me. I pulled the covers up to my chin and tried not to think about the warmth of his hand still burning against my skin, or the way he'd looked at me like I was already his. Mine, he'd said in my unconscious memory, and God help me, I'd just agreed to let him keep me. The morning sun poured through floor-to-ceiling windows like liquid gold, and I woke to the smell of fresh coffee and something baking, cinnamon maybe, and butter. For a moment, I let myself pretend this was normal, that I belonged in this cloud of a bed, in this palace of a room, in a world where breakfast smells wafted from a kitchen I hadn't even seen yet. Then reality crashed back, the dull ache in my ribs, the bandage on my thumb, and the memory of steel-gray eyes looking at me like I was a puzzle piece he intended to keep. Teresa appeared with the same quiet efficiency as the night before, carrying a breakfast tray that looked like something from a magazine spread, fresh fruit cut into perfect shapes, pastries that were definitely not from a grocery store bakery, and coffee in a cup so delicate I was afraid to touch it. Mr. Russo requests your presence in his office at 10, she said, setting the tray across my lap. I've drawn you a bath, and there are clothes in the closet. Take your time. He's on a call with Tokyo, and will be occupied for another hour. Teresa. I caught her wrist gently. How long have you worked for him? Something flickered in her kind eyes. 12 years, Miss Hayes. Is he? I struggled to find the right words. Is he dangerous? She was quiet for a moment, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the bedspread. Mr. Russo is many things. Dangerous, yes, but also loyal to those under his protection. He's never harmed anyone who didn't deserve it, and he saved more lives than you might imagine. She met my eyes. You're safe here, truly. He would burn down the city before letting anyone hurt you. That should have been comforting. Instead, it sent ice down my spine, because men who would burn down cities were exactly the kind I should run from. After she left, I forced myself out of bed, every movement a reminder of yesterday's violence. The bathroom was obscene, all marble and gold fixtures, with a bathtub that could fit 3 people, and a shower that had more settings than my car. I sank into the bath Teresa had prepared, fragrant with something expensive and floral, and tried to organize my thoughts. 1 month. I'd agreed to 1 month, 30 days of playing whatever role Dante Russo wanted in exchange for my mother's life. When I put it that way, it seemed like the easiest decision in the world. What was my comfort, my safety, my freedom, compared to her survival? But the way he'd looked at me last night, like I was something he intended to own, that stayed with me, a warning my body understood even if my desperate heart wanted to ignore it. The closet turned out to be a room unto itself, lined with clothes that still had tags attached, designer labels I recognized from magazine ads, silk blouses, cashmere sweaters, tailored pants that probably cost more than a month's rent. Everything in my size, from underwear to shoes. The efficiency of it was unsettling. He'd had someone research my measurements, my style, my preferences, and execute it all in less than 24 hours. This was a man accustomed to making things happen with a snap of his fingers. I chose the simplest outfit I could find. Black pants, a cream silk blouse, low heels, and braided my hair back severely, trying to armor myself with whatever professionalism I could muster. The girl in the mirror looked like she belonged in this penthouse, and that scared me more than anything. At exactly 10 o'clock, Marco appeared outside my door. Up close, in daylight, he was even more intimidating, maybe 6'5", built like he bench-pressed cars for fun, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw and eyes that had seen things I couldn't imagine. Miss Hayes. He nodded respectfully. I'll take you to Mr. Russo. We moved through the penthouse, and I tried to map it mentally. The space was enormous, decorated with the same understated luxury as my bedroom. Original art on every wall. I recognized a Monet, or at least a very good forgery. Furniture that was beautiful but minimal, like someone had carefully curated each piece, and everywhere, subtle signs of security, cameras in corners, keypads on certain doors, windows that were definitely bulletproof. Marco stopped before a set of double doors, dark wood, ornately carved, and knocked twice. Come in. Dante's voice, muffled but commanding. The office was exactly what I expected, and somehow more. One wall was entirely windows, offering a panoramic view of Montevallo's waterfront and the ocean beyond. The others were lined with bookshelves, actual books, leather-bound and well-read, not just decoration. A massive desk dominated the space, all dark wood and clean lines, with multiple computer monitors and phones arranged with military precision. Dante sat behind it, and even sitting, he radiated that same coiled power I'd felt on the balcony. He'd dressed for business, charcoal suit, burgundy tie, hair styled back to reveal that scarred eyebrow. He looked like he could be on the cover of Forbes, or a most wanted poster. Emma. He stood, buttoning his jacket, and gestured to the chair across from him. You look well. How are you feeling? Like I made a deal with the devil. The words came out before I could stop them. His smile was sharp as a blade. The devil has better suits. Please sit. I lowered myself into the chair. Leather, expensive, comfortable in a way that made me want to sink into it, and forced my spine straight. You said we'd discuss my new position. Direct. I like that. He moved around the desk, leaning against it so he was closer to me, close enough that I caught his scent again, that intoxicating mix of cologne and danger. You'll be my personal assistant, managing my schedule, handling correspondence, attending meetings with me, nothing illegal, as I promised. Though, his eyes glinted. You may hear things that would shock your innocent sensibilities. I'm not that innocent. No? He tilted his head, studying me. Tell me, Emma Hayes, what do you know about the Russo family business? Officially? Real estate, restaurants, import-export. Unofficially. I met his gaze steadily. I'm not stupid. I know the rumors. And they don't frighten you? Everything about this frightens me. Honesty seemed safer than pretense with a man who'd already excavated my entire life. But my mother is dying, and you're offering her a chance to live. Fear seems like a luxury I can't afford. Something shifted in his expression. Approval, maybe, or respect. Your mother. Teresa tells me you'd like to visit her today. If that's allowed. You're not a prisoner, Emma. You're under my protection, which means Marco goes with you everywhere. And you tell me where you're going before you leave, but you're free to visit your mother whenever you wish. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, then showed me the screen. This is Dr. Helena Voss's schedule. She's cleared space for your mother on Friday. The Montevallo Cancer Center will contact your mother's current facility today to begin transferring records. I stared at the calendar appointment, my throat suddenly tight. 3 days. In 3 days, my mother would be seeing the best oncologist in the country. How did you... Friday is 2 days away. You set her waiting list. I said it was 2 years long for most people. His smile was dark. I'm not most people. Dr. Voss and I have an understanding. I didn't want to know what kind of understanding. Didn't want to imagine what favors a man like Dante Russo might have done to earn such immediate access. I just nodded, blinking back the tears that threatened. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He moved back behind his desk, pulling up something on one of his monitors. We need to discuss the threat. The bombing wasn't random. It was coordinated, professional. My security team is analyzing footage and running down leads, but until we identify who ordered it, you're in danger simply by association. You keep saying that. But why would they care about me? I'm nobody. You saved my life. He turned the monitor toward me, and I saw frozen security footage from the party. The moment before the explosion, my hands on his chest, pushing him back. This footage was supposed to be destroyed in the blast. It wasn't. Which means someone knows what you did. And in my world, Emma, anyone who protects me becomes valuable, either as leverage against me or as a target to hurt me. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. What kind of life do you live where someone would kill a waitress just to hurt you? The only life I've ever known. No apology in his voice, just fact. My father built this empire on blood and loyalty. I inherited both. The people who tried to kill me aren't going to stop because they failed once. They'll regroup, plan better, and next time, his eyes locked on mine, intense enough to pin me to the chair. They'll come for everyone I care about. You don't care about me. You don't even know me. Not yet. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket, and moved toward me with that predatory grace. But I intend to, starting now. Marco will take you to see your mother. You have 2 hours. After that, we have a dinner meeting at Il Paradiso, one of my restaurants. You'll accompany me. As your assistant. As my guest. He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it, letting him pull me to my feet. We were standing too close, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. I want them to see you with me. I want everyone in Montevallo to know you're under my protection. Why does that sound more like a threat than a comfort? His laugh was low, genuine. Because you're smarter than you give yourself credit for. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. A gesture so gentle it seemed at odds with everything else about him. Go see your mother, Emma. Tell her about Dr. Voss. Give her hope. And tonight, his smile turned predatory. Let me show you my world. Marco drove like he expected an ambush at every intersection, constantly checking mirrors, taking random turns, scanning rooftops. The car was a black Mercedes with windows so tinted I could barely see out, and I suspected it was armored beneath its sleek exterior. How long have you worked for Dante? I asked, needing to fill the silence. 15 years, Miss Hayes. His voice was surprisingly gentle for such a large man. Since I was 20. And you've been his bodyguard all that time? His friend. His brother. His guard. Marco glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Mr. Russo saved my life when I was nobody. A kid from the streets with nothing. He gave me purpose, family. I'd die for him without hesitation. The absolute conviction in his voice sent chills down my spine. This was the kind of loyalty Dante inspired. The bone-deep, die-for-you kind. Has anyone ever tried to kill him before? Many times. 17 attempts in the last decade. Said so casually, like he was discussing the weather. He's survived them all. He's smart, always 3 steps ahead. But this one... Marco's jaw tightened. They got too close. If you hadn't pushed him, I just reacted. I wasn't thinking. That's what makes it matter, Miss Hayes. Anyone can choose to be loyal. But instinct, that's truth your body knows before your mind does. We pulled up to the hospice facility where my mother had been for the last 2 months. A squat, depressing building that smelled like illness and resignation. The contrast to Dante's penthouse was so stark it physically hurt. Marco opened my door, scanning the street before allowing me to exit. I'll be right here. You have 2 hours. Mom was in her usual room at the end of the hall, propped up in bed watching a game show with the sound too loud. She'd lost more weight since last week. Her skin papery and thin, dark circles making her eyes look hollow. But when she saw me, her whole face lit up. Emma. Baby, what are you doing here on a Tuesday? Don't you have work? I pulled a chair close to her bed, taking her frail hand in mine. I have news, Mom. Good news. As I told her about Dr. Voss, about the appointment on Friday, about the treatment that could actually save her, I watched hope bloom in her eyes like a flower opening to sunlight. She cried, and I cried. And for a moment the world was just us, mother and daughter, clinging to the possibility of more time together. I didn't tell her about the bomb, didn't mention Dante Russo or the deal I'd made, didn't explain that her miracle came with a price I still didn't fully understand. Some truths were too heavy to share. When I left, she was already looking stronger, animated, planning all the things she'd do once she was in remission. The weight of her hope settled on my shoulders like a mantle I couldn't shed. Marco was waiting exactly where I'd left him, and we drove back through the city in comfortable silence. But as we approached Dante's building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in Montevallo's most expensive district, Marco spoke again. He's different with you. What do you mean? Mr. Russo. He's careful, controlled. He doesn't let people get close, doesn't show vulnerability. But with you, Marco pulled into the underground garage, past multiple security checkpoints. He's protective in a way I haven't seen before, like you matter more than you should. I saved his life. He's paying a debt. Marco's eyes met mine in the mirror, and there was something knowing in them. If you believe that, Miss Hayes, then you don't understand him at all. The words followed me back into the penthouse, into my golden bedroom, into the hours I spent trying not to think about what tonight's dinner would bring. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, a truth was crystallizing that I didn't want to acknowledge. Dante Russo wasn't just protecting me out of obligation, he was claiming me. And God help me, I didn't know if I had the strength to resist. Il Paradiso lived up to its name. The restaurant occupied the entire top floor of a historic building overlooking the harbor, all soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers that scattered light like captured stars. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the ocean turning gold under the setting sun, and the air hummed with quiet conversations in multiple languages, the particular frequency of power and money dining together. I felt like an imposter in the midnight blue dress that had appeared in my closet with a note, "Wear this tonight, D." The silk clung to curves I usually hid under baggy work clothes, and the neckline dipped lower than anything I'd ever worn. Dangerous heels made me 3 inches taller. A stylist had appeared at 7, another efficiency of Dante's world, sweeping my hair into an elegant updo and applying makeup that made my eyes look enormous and mysterious. I didn't recognize the girl in the mirror. She looked like she belonged in places like this. Dante had sent Marco to escort me, and now I stood in the restaurant's entrance, acutely aware of every eye that turned my direction. The maitre d' approached with a practiced smile that didn't quite hide his curiosity. "Miss Hayes, Mr. Russo is expecting you. This way, please." We wove through tables where I recognized faces from magazine covers and news broadcasts. A shipping magnate, a tech billionaire, a woman who'd just been appointed to the federal court. This was where Montevallo's elite gathered, where deals were made over wine that cost more than my monthly salary. And in the corner, at a table that commanded a view of both the ocean and the entire restaurant, sat Dante. He stood as I approached, and something in his expression, the way his eyes tracked over me, slowly, appreciatively, made heat bloom under my skin. He'd dressed for the occasion, too. A navy suit that looked custom-made, crisp white shirt open at the collar, no tie, dangerous and elegant in equal measure. "Emma." He took my hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and intimate. "You're stunning. The dress is beautiful." I tried to deflect, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. "Thank you." "The dress is just fabric." His voice dropped lower, meant only for me. "You make it beautiful." He guided me to my seat with a hand on the small of my back, possessive, claiming, and I was hyper-aware of every place we touched. Marco took up position at a nearby table with two other men I recognized as Dante's security, their eyes constantly scanning the room. A waiter appeared immediately, pouring wine without asking, setting down small plates of something that looked like art. "We're waiting for one more," Dante said, dismissing the waiter with a slight nod. "A business associate. I want you to observe tonight, Emma. Watch how people interact with me, what they say and what they don't say. Your job as my assistant will require reading rooms, understanding dynamics. Is this a test? It's an education." He lifted his wine glass, studying me over the rim. "Tell me about your mother. How was she?" The shift to personal threw me off balance, which was probably intentional. Hopeful. More alive than I've seen her in months. "She's already planning what she'll do after treatment, gardening, traveling, things she'd given up on." I took a sip of wine to steady myself. "Thank you for that. Whatever else happens, whatever this costs me, seeing her have hope again, it's worth it." Something flickered in his expression. Not quite guilt, but close. "What do you think this will cost you, Emma?" "I don't know yet." Honesty seemed safer than lies with him. "But men like you don't give without taking. You said you wanted to get to know me, to understand why I saved you, but I think there's more to it than that, perceptive." He leaned back, entirely at ease in his kingdom. "You're right. There is more. But we have time to explore that. Tonight is about something else." Before I could ask what, a man approached our table, 60-ish, silver hair, expensive suit, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Power radiated from him, but it was different from Dante's, more corporate, less dangerous. "Dante. Always a pleasure." They shook hands, and I caught the way the older man's grip lingered a fraction too long, a test of dominance that Dante won without apparent effort. "Robert. Thank you for coming." Dante gestured to me. "This is Emma Hayes, my personal assistant." "Emma? Robert Castellano. He owns half the construction contracts in Montevallo." "Miss Hayes." Robert's eyes raked over me in a way that made my skin crawl. "A pleasure." "Dante, you didn't mention you'd hired such a beautiful assistant. Recent acquisition." Dante's voice was mild, but something in it made Robert's smile falter. "Emma is also under my personal protection. I trust that's clear." The warning was unmistakable. Robert's expression shifted to careful neutrality. "Of course, my apologies if I seemed forward." As Robert took his seat, I realized what I was witnessing. Dante marking territory. Not just protecting me, but claiming me publicly, letting everyone who saw us know I was his. The thought should have angered me. Instead, it sent a confusing heat through my veins. Dinner progressed like a chess match. Robert wanted Dante's backing on a waterfront development project, something about luxury condos and marina expansion. The numbers were staggering, the profit margins obscene, but beneath the business talk, I sensed something else. Tension. calculation. The permits are already arranged, Robert was saying. City Council is on board. Environmental impact approved. We just need capital and your connections to smooth the remaining obstacles. Connections. Dante's smile was sharp. You mean you need me to handle the union problems and the residents who don't want to be displaced? I prefer to think of it as community outreach. I watched Dante's face, reading the micro-expressions Teresa had taught me to look for during our prep session that afternoon. The slight tightening around his eyes, the way his fingers drummed once, just once, against his wine glass. Who else is investing? I asked, surprising myself. Both men turned to me. Robert's expression was condescending. I'm sorry, dear. The financial details are probably too complex. She asked a relevant question. Dante's voice cut through the dismissal like a blade. Answer her, Robert. Robert's jaw tightened. Private investors. A consortium I've put together. Names. Dante's tone allowed no deflection. The older man rattled off a list, and I caught the way Dante's expression cooled with each name. I didn't recognize them, but clearly he did, and clearly he didn't like what he was hearing. Emma. Dante turned to me, and I saw the test in his eyes. What do you think? Should we invest? My heart hammered. This was insane. I knew nothing about real estate or construction. But he'd asked, and something told me the answer mattered, so I thought about what I'd observed. Robert's too eager smile. The way he'd dismissed me immediately. The list of investors that had made Dante's eyes go cold. No, I said quietly. Something feels wrong about it. Robert laughed. Actually laughed. Mr. Russo, surely you're not basing business decisions on feminine intuition. I'm basing them on the fact that 3 of your private investors are currently under federal investigation for money laundering. Dante's voice was silk over steel. And the fact that you came to me because your legitimate funding fell through. You want to use my name, my reputation, to legitimize a project that's likely a front for something else. Did you think I wouldn't check? The color drained from Robert's face. Dante, I can explain. Don't. Dante stood, and the temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. We're done here, Robert. And if I hear you've approached any of my associates with this deal, if I hear you've used my name in any capacity, I'll make sure every permit you have gets tied up in red tape for the next decade. Are we clear? Robert stood too, hands raised placatingly. Crystal clear. My apologies for wasting your time. He left quickly, and several nearby tables had gone quiet, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Dante sat back down, utterly calm, and took a sip of his wine as if nothing had happened. How did you know? I asked, still processing what I'd witnessed. I had Marco run background checks on everyone Roberts worked with in the last year, the moment he requested this meeting. Dante's smile was predatory. I'm always 3 steps ahead, Emma. It's how I've survived this long. But you... He reached across the table, taking my hand. You trusted your instinct. That's valuable. Rare. I just thought he seemed dishonest. Most people in my world are dishonest. Learning to navigate those waters, to read between lines and under surfaces. That's an art form. His thumb traced circles on my palm, and I couldn't pull away even though I knew I should. You have good instincts. We'll refine them. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of exquisite food I barely tasted, and conversations that felt like lessons. Dante introduced me to several other guests who approached our table. Always with that same possessive hand on my back, that same clear message. She's mine. Hands off. By the time we left, my head was spinning with information and wine, and the constant awareness of his presence beside me. Marco drove us back through the city, and Dante sat close enough in the back seat that our thighs touched, that I could feel the heat of him through expensive fabric. You did well tonight, he said as we rode the private elevator up to the penthouse. Better than well. You have a natural talent for reading people. I've spent years being invisible, watching people who never noticed I was there. You learn things. You'll never be invisible again. The elevator doors opened, and he guided me into the penthouse with that hand on my back that was becoming familiar, dangerous. Not to me, not to anyone in my world. Tonight made sure of that. We stood in the foyer, and I knew I should go to my room, put distance between us, Remember that this was temporary, transactional, but his hand was still on my back, and his eyes were dark with something that made my pulse race. Emma. My name in his voice was a caress. Do you know why I really asked you to stay here? Why I'm not just hiding you in a safe house with round-the-clock security to pay your debt? My voice came out breathless. No. He stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Because from the moment you pushed me out of the way of that bomb, from the moment I saw you on your knees cleaning up broken glass with blood on your hands, I've been unable to think about anything else. You haunt me, Emma Hayes. Your courage, your sacrifice, your stubborn refusal to be anything less than honest, even when lies would serve you better. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I told myself it was gratitude, obligation. But the truth is, his voice dropped to barely a whisper. I want you. Not as an assistant, not as someone under my protection. I want you in my world, by my side, in my bed. I want to know every thought in your head, every dream you've buried, every part of yourself you've hidden away. I should have been terrified, should have pulled away, reminded him of our deal, maintained boundaries, but his touch was fire on my skin, and something in me, something hungry and desperate and tired of always being invisible, wanted to lean into it. This is crazy, I whispered. You don't even know me. Then let me know you. His forehead touched mine, and we breathed the same air. Stay with me tonight. Not because of our deal, not because of your mother. Stay because you want to. Every rational thought screamed at me to walk away. This man was dangerous. His world was violence and secrets and enemies who planted bombs. Getting closer to him would only drag me deeper into darkness I didn't understand. But his hands were gentle on my face, and his eyes looked at me like I was something precious. And God help me. I was so tired of being alone. One night, I heard myself say, just tonight. His smile was triumph and tenderness wrapped together. Just tonight, he agreed. But we both knew it was a lie. He kissed me then, slow and deep, and I tasted wine and danger and the beginning of something I couldn't take back. His hands slid into my hair, careful of the elegant styling, and I gripped his jacket like it was the only thing keeping me anchored. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard, and his eyes had gone molten silver. Come. He took my hand, leading me through the penthouse to a room I hadn't seen. His bedroom, all dark colors and masculine lines, with windows that showed the city sprawled below like conquered territory. He undressed me slowly, reverently, like unwrapping something precious. The expensive dress pooled at my feet. His suit followed. And when we tumbled into sheets that smelled like him, when his hands mapped every inch of my skin like he was memorizing me, I let myself forgot about bombs and threats and deals with devils, forgot about the timer ticking on our arrangement, forgot that men like Dante Russo didn't keep girls like me. They used them and discarded them when something shinier came along. I let myself pretend, for just one night, that his whispered words against my skin, beautiful, precious, mine, were true. That I could belong in his world, that this was real. Later, as I lay in his arms with the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling, his phone buzzed. He reached for it, careful not to disturb me, and I felt him go tense. What is it? I asked, drowsy and sated. Marco. They identified one of the men behind the bombing. His voice was flat, dangerous. Viktor Kozlov, Russian mob, works for Alexei Volkov. The names meant nothing to me, but clearly they meant something to him. Volkov has been trying to move into my territory for years. He wants the waterfront, the ports, the supply chains I control. Dante's arm tightened around me, protective. This wasn't just about killing me, it was about destabilizing my organization, creating chaos he could exploit. What happens now? He was quiet for a long moment. Now I remind everyone why they should fear the Russo name. But first, he turned to face me, and even in the darkness I could see the predatory gleam in his eyes. I make sure you're untouchable. Tomorrow we make a public statement. A charity event, cameras everywhere. I want Volkov to see that you're not just under my protection. You're mine. That touching you means war, Dante. No arguments, Emma. You saved my life. I'll protect yours no matter what it costs. His kiss was fierce, claiming. Sleep. Tomorrow we show Montevallo that Emma Hayes belongs to Dante Russo, and as I drifted off in his arms, wrapped in silk sheets and dangerous promises, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. That somewhere in the last 24 hours, this had stopped being about a deal and started being about something far more dangerous. The charity gala was a declaration of war wrapped in champagne and designer gowns. Dante had explained it over breakfast. A lavish spread I barely touched, too nervous about what the evening would bring. The Montevallo Children's Hospital benefit was one of the city's biggest social events, attended by everyone who mattered. Politicians, business leaders, old money families, and the kinds of people who controlled things from shadows. Volkov will be there, Dante had said, his hand covering mine across the table. He's a major donor, uses it to legitimize his operations. When he sees you with me, when he understands what you are to me, he'll know that coming after you means all-out war. It's a message, Emma, one he can't ignore, what I was to him. The words echoed in my head as a team of stylists transformed me in the penthouse's spare bedroom, now apparently my personal salon. They worked with military precision. Hair swept into an intricate updo, makeup that made my eyes smoky and mysterious, nails painted a deep burgundy that matched the gown hanging nearby. The dress was a masterpiece, deep red silk that clung to every curve before flowing to the floor, with a neckline that plunged dangerously and a slit up one thigh that seemed almost indecent. Diamonds. Real diamonds, Dante had assured me, glittered at my throat and ears, borrowed from a collection that probably cost more than my entire neighborhood. When I finally looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. The girl staring back looked powerful, dangerous, like she belonged on Dante's arm. Teresa appeared in the doorway, holding a small box. "From Mr. Russo," she said, her smile knowing. Inside was a bracelet, delicate platinum links with a single charm, a small key, encrusted with tiny diamonds. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. He was claiming me publicly, marking me as his with jewelry that screamed ownership. I should have refused it, should have drawn a line between what we'd shared last night and what this was. A performance, a strategic move in a game I didn't understand. But my fingers were already fastening the clasp, the metal warm against my skin. Dante was waiting in the foyer when I emerged, and the look on his face made my breath catch. He wore a tuxedo that looked like it had been sewn onto his body, midnight black with a bow tie that matched my dress, but it was his eyes that held me. Molten silver, hungry, possessive. "Christo," he breathed, moving toward me with predatory grace. "You're going to start a war looking like that. Isn't that the point?" His smile was sharp as a blade. He offered his arm, and I took it, feeling the coiled strength beneath expensive fabric. Marco and 3 other guards fell into formation around us as we headed to the elevator. The gala was being held at the Montevallo Grand, a historic hotel even more opulent than the Belmonte. We arrived in a convoy of black vehicles that screamed security, and camera flashes exploded as Dante helped me from the car. Photographers shouted questions, and I caught fragments. "Mr. Russo, who is your date?" "Miss, what's your name?" "Dante, is this a new relationship?" Dante's hand settled on my lower back, possessive and unmistakable, as he guided me up the red carpet. He didn't answer the questions, didn't need to. The message was clear in every gesture, every protective touch. She's mine. Inside, the ballroom was a fantasy of crystal and gold. Chandeliers the size of cars hung from frescoed ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor. Women in gowns that cost more than cars glided across marble floors, while men in tuxedos discussed deals worth millions, and everyone, turned to stare as we entered. I felt their eyes like physical touches, cataloging, judging, wondering who I was and what I meant to Dante Russo. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Glasses froze halfway to lips. The weight of their attention was suffocating. "Breathe," Dante murmured against my ear, his hand tightening on my waist. You're doing perfectly. Let them look. Let them wonder. By the end of tonight, every person in this room will know you're untouchable. We made our way through the crowd, and Dante played his role flawlessly, introducing me as my Emma to business associates, keeping me tucked against his side, his touch constantly possessive. Hand on my back, fingers laced through mine, arm around my waist. Each gesture a claim, a warning. I met dozens of people whose names I'd never remember. A state senator, the CEO of a shipping company, a federal judge who looked at Dante with barely concealed distaste. All of them assessed me, trying to figure out what I was. Mistress, girlfriend, future wife. The truth was, I didn't know either. Then I felt Dante go still beside me, tension radiating through his frame. I followed his gaze across the ballroom to where a man stood surrounded by his own entourage of expensive suits and barely concealed security. He was maybe 50, with silver hair and the kind of face that might have been handsome, before it hardened into cruelty. His suit was impeccable, his watch probably worth a fortune. But it was his eyes that made my skin crawl, pale blue, cold as Arctic ice, assessing everything with the calculation of a predator. Volkov, Dante said quietly, and I felt the name like a curse. Alexei Volkov crossed the ballroom with the confidence of a man who owned everything he touched. His guards fanned out subtly, mirroring Dante's security, and I realized I was watching two apex predators circle each other in a room full of prey. Dante. Volkov's accent was thick, Russian, turning the name into something almost mocking. What a surprise to see you here. I heard you had a little accident at the Belmonte party, nothing I couldn't handle. Dante's voice was mild, but his hand on my waist tightened protectively. Alexei, I see you're still buying your way into Montevallo's good graces. We all have our methods. Those cold eyes slid to me, and I fought not to shiver. And who is this beautiful creature? I don't believe we've been introduced. Emma Hayes, Dante said before I could speak, my personal assistant, and much more than that. The emphasis on those last words was unmistakable. Volkov's smile didn't reach his eyes. Charming. Tell me, Miss Hayes, how does one become Dante Russo's personal assistant? I'm always looking for talented people. She's not available, Dante cut in, his voice dropping to something dangerous. For employment or anything else, I believe I'm making myself clear, Alexei. Crystal. But Volkov's eyes stayed on me, assessing, calculating. You have excellent taste, Dante. I hope you're taking good care of such a precious acquisition. It would be terrible if something were to happen to her. The threat was barely veiled, and I felt Dante's entire body coil like a spring ready to snap. Marco shifted closer, hand moving subtly toward his jacket. The temperature in our little circle dropped 20 degrees. If anything happens to her, Dante said, his voice soft as silk and deadly as poison. If she gets so much as a scratch, if someone looks at her wrong, I will burn your entire organization to the ground. I will hunt down everyone you care about, everyone you've ever protected, and I will make them suffer in ways that keep you awake at night. Do we understand each other? Volkov's smile was thin. Perfectly. Enjoy your evening, Dante. Miss Hayes. He nodded to me, then melted back into the crowd with his security in tow. The moment he was gone, Dante pulled me close, his forehead touching mine. Are you all right? I just met the man who tried to kill you. My voice shook slightly. The man who might try to kill me, so no, I'm not all right. He won't touch you. Dante's hands cupped my face, thumbs stroking my cheekbones. I meant every word I said. You're under my protection, Emma. That means you're safer than the president. Unless you're not there to protect me. Something flickered in his eyes, acknowledgement of the truth we both knew. He couldn't be everywhere, couldn't guard me every second. Being with him made me a target, and all the promises in the world couldn't change that. Dance with me, he said suddenly, taking my hand and leading me to the floor where couples swayed to a string quartet. He pulled me into his arms, one hand on my waist, the other holding mine against his chest. We moved together with surprising ease, and I let myself sink into the moment, the music, the warmth of his body, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. What happens after tonight? I asked quietly, After you've made your statement, shown Volkov I'm yours, then we wait. He'll either back down or escalate. If he's smart, he'll realize that touching you isn't worth the war it would start. Dante spun me gently, bringing me back against him, and you continue being my assistant, living in my penthouse, driving me slowly insane with those eyes. Dante. I know. His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath caught. I know this wasn't part of our deal. I know you agreed to 1 month, nothing more. But Emma? His eyes held mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I don't want this to end. What we have, what's growing between us, it's real. Tell me you feel it too. I did. God help me. I felt it in every racing heartbeat, every time he touched me, every moment his eyes found mine across a room. This dangerous, impossible thing that had bloomed between a girl from the warehouse district and a man who ruled Montevallo's underworld. It's crazy, I whispered. The best things usually are. He leaned down, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that was gentle and claiming at once. Around us, I felt the room's attention sharpen, camera phones appearing, whispered conversations spreading like wildfire. This kiss was a public claim, a line drawn in sand that was really concrete. When he pulled back, his smile was triumphant. There. Now everyone knows. You're mine, Emma Hayes, in every way that matters. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of champagne and careful conversations. Dante kept me close, introducing me to people whose names appeared in Forbes and political offices. I smiled, made small talk, played the role of dutiful girlfriend or mistress or whatever they assumed I was. But I was hyper-aware of Volkov's presence across the room, those cold blue eyes finding me periodically, assessing, and of Dante's guards, constantly vigilant, scanning for threats. This was my life now, luxury and danger wrapped together, indistinguishable. We were preparing to leave when a commotion erupted near the entrance, raised voices, security moving, and then my mother. She stood in the doorway in her hospital robe and slippers, looking frail and confused, supported by a nurse I didn't recognize. Her eyes found me across the ballroom, and relief flooded her face. Emma! Oh, thank God, Emma! I broke from Dante's side, rushing toward her, my heart hammering. Mom? What are you doing here? You should be resting. They said you were in the hospital. She gripped my arms, and I felt how weak she'd become. They said there was an accident, that you were hurt. I had to see you, had to make sure. Who told you that? My blood ran cold. The nurse stepped forward, young, professional, apologetic. I'm so sorry, Miss Hayes. A man called the facility saying he was family, that you'd been in an accident. Your mother was so upset. She insisted I bring her to verify you were safe. Dante was beside me instantly, his face carved from ice. Describe the man. I didn't see him. He just called Marco. Dante's voice cut through the growing crowd. Get them to the car. Now. Emma, your mother stays with us tonight. It's not safe at the facility. What's happening? My mother asked, frightened now by the tension radiating from Dante. Emma, who is this man? Someone who wants to keep you safe, Mrs. Hayes. Dante's voice gentled for her, even as his hand gripped my waist protectively. Please, let my men take you somewhere secure. Emma will explain everything. It took 20 minutes to get my mother settled in one of the Mercedes, with Teresa to keep her calm, and Marco coordinating what looked like a military extraction. Dante made calls in rapid Italian, his face getting darker with each conversation. Finally, in the car heading back to the penthouse, he turned to me. It was a message. Volkov wanted to show he could get to her. To you. That my protection only extends so far. He used my mother as a prop in your power games? Fury cut through my fear. She's dying, Dante. She's fragile and scared, and now she's under the same protection you are. His hands framed my face, forcing me to look at him. I'm moving her to a private facility tomorrow. Top security, best care. Dr. Voss will oversee everything personally. She'll be safer than she's ever been. I promise you, Emma. No one will touch her. How can you promise that? He got to her once, and I will make sure he regrets it. The cold fury in Dante's voice made me shiver. Volkov just declared war. He doesn't know it yet, But he's already lost. Back at the penthouse, Teresa settled my mother in a guest room while Dr. Voss, summoned within an hour of our call, examined her to ensure the evening's stress hadn't caused any damage. I sat with Mom, holding her hand while she drifted into medicated sleep, still confused, but relieved I was safe. Dante found me there an hour later, slumped in the chair beside her bed, exhausted and overwhelmed. "Come," he said softly, offering his hand. "She's safe now. You need rest too." I let him lead me to his bedroom, our bedroom now, I supposed, given where I'd spent the last 2 nights. He undressed me gently, replacing the expensive gown with one of his shirts, and pulled me into bed against him. "I'm sorry," he murmured into my hair. "I didn't think he'd move this fast, this boldly, but Emma..." He tilted my face up to his. "I meant what I said. I will protect you both, whatever it takes, even if it means war, especially then." His kiss was fierce, claiming, "You're mine now. Your mother is under my protection. That makes you family, Emma. And I protect my family with everything I have." Family. The word should have terrified me, implying permanence, commitment, a future I'd never imagined. But wrapped in his arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart, I felt something else. Safe. Cherished. Home. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now I make some calls. By morning, Volkov will understand the consequences of touching what's mine." His hand stroked down my spine, soothing. "And you get your mother the best care in the country. You continue working with me, and you let yourself be happy. Can you do that?" "I don't know if I know how to be happy." "Then let me teach you." His smile was tender, dangerous, devastating. "Let me show you what your life can be, Emma Hayes. Not struggling, not invisible, but seen, treasured, protected. Mine." There was that word again. Mine. It should have made me rebel, should have triggered every independent instinct I had. Instead, I kissed him. Poured every complicated emotion into it, gratitude and fear and desire and something that felt dangerously like love. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I made my choice. "Okay," I whispered, "teach me." 3 months later, my mother walked out of the Montevallo Cancer Center cancer-free. Dr. Voss called it a miracle, but I knew better. It was money and expertise, and Dante's ruthless efficiency in making things happen. Mom had been moved to a private facility the morning after the gala, a place that looked more like a luxury resort than a medical center, with gardens and private rooms and staff that catered to her every need. I visited her every day, watching color return to her cheeks, watching her strength rebuild, watching hope transform into reality. And every night, I returned to the penthouse, to Dante. We'd fallen into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Mornings working together in his office, me learning the legitimate side of his empire while carefully not asking about the parts that happened in shadows. Afternoons visiting Mom or meeting with the various charities I'd started working with, using Dante's money and influence to actually help people like I'd once been. Evenings were ours. Dinners at his restaurants, quiet nights and watching the city lights, and always ending, tangled together in sheets that smelled like us. Volkov had backed down after that night. Dante never told me exactly what he'd done, but 2 weeks after the gala, word spread that the Russian had lost a major shipment and 3 of his key lieutenants had mysteriously decided to retire. The message was clear. Touch what's mine, and I'll dismantle everything you've built. I'd become a fixture in Montevallo's elite circles, Dante Russo's woman, powerful by association. People who would have stepped over me when I was a waitress now courted my favor, invited me to committees, asked my opinion. It should have felt fake. Instead, it felt like becoming who I was always meant to be. "You're thinking too loud," Dante murmured, pulling me closer on the penthouse balcony where we'd retreated after dinner. The same balcony where I'd pushed him out of death's way, though the scorch marks had long since been repaired. Just thinking about how different everything is. I turned in his arms, looking up at his face. Familiar now, beloved. 3 months ago, I was invisible. Now you're mine. He kissed my forehead, tender and possessive at once. "And I'm yours, Emma, completely." Even though our deal is technically over? 1 month, we said. His smile was wolfish. I believe the terms have been renegotiated. Oh? I don't remember signing new paperwork. No. But you moved your things into my closet. You started introducing me as your boyfriend. You let me put my ring on your finger. He caught my left hand, where a diamond, obscenely large and beautiful, caught the city lights. He'd proposed last week, not with flowers and champagne, but after a charity board meeting where I'd brilliantly navigated a political minefield. He'd pulled me into his office, closed the door, and said, "Marry me. Not because of a deal, not because I saved your mother. Marry me because I can't imagine my life without you in it." I'd said yes before my brain caught up with my heart. "Your mother approved," Dante continued, pulling me closer. "When I asked her permission, she cried. Said she'd never seen you so happy. I didn't know I could be this happy." I traced the scar through his eyebrow, that mark of survived violence. "You gave me my mother's life back. You gave me a purpose, a place in the world. You made me visible. No, amore mio." His hands framed my face with devastating gentleness. "You were always visible to me. From that first moment, covered in blood from broken glass, trying to stay invisible when you were the most real person in that room. I didn't make you anything. I just gave you the space to become who you already were." Tears pricked my eyes, happy and overwhelmed. "I love you. I know it's crazy. We barely know each other. We know everything that matters." His kiss was deep, claiming home, and we have a lifetime to learn the rest. A lifetime. With this dangerous, devoted man who'd turned my world inside out, who'd taken a desperate deal and transformed it into something real, something lasting. "Dance with me," I said, echoing that night at the gala. There was no music, just the city humming below and the wind carrying salt from the ocean. But Dante pulled me into his arms, and we swayed together under the stars, two people who'd found each other in explosions and bargains and impossible choices. I would have pushed anyone out of the way. I admitted softly. "It wasn't special, just instinct. But you pushed me, and that changed everything." His lips brushed my temple. "My Emma. My brave, beautiful girl who saved my life and stole my heart. I will spend every day of our lives making sure you never regret that choice." "I don't regret it." I pulled back to look at him, this man who'd claimed me, protected me, loved me with an intensity that still took my breath away. Not for a second. "Good." His smile was pure masculine satisfaction. "Because I'm never letting you go." Below us, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. Montevallo, the place where a poor waitress had pushed a Mafia boss off a balcony and found her destiny in the explosion that followed. Where desperation had transformed into hope, deals had become devotion, and survival had bloomed into love. I'd walked into Dante Russo's world expecting darkness. Instead, I'd found light. And standing in his arms, wrapped in safety and desire and promise, I finally understood what it meant to be home. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, probably dangerous, definitely complicated. But I'd face it with him, my protector, my partner, my love.